Good morning, friends. I'm here to read chapter 13 of Half Upon a Time. If you remember from yesterday's chapter, our characters are back into another major problem. At the end of chapter 12, Jack got placed into the giant's mouth. So we have to see how he gets out of this predicament and what the following action is for this climax. Chapter 13. Jack hadn't ever been eaten before, but the smell was just about what he would have imagined it would be like if he had ever stopped to actually think about it. The absolute pitch-black darkness, though, was a bit surprising. As he passed the giant's lips, Jack had just enough time to make out a dark tunnel of a throat before the giant's mouth closed, taking all the light with it. As Jack fell straight down into the throat, he decided he was actually happy he couldn't see. After all, wasn't it better not to know exactly how disgusting his death was going to be? And then Jack smacked face first into something warm, slippery and soft. Without thinking, he threw his arms out and grabbed whatever it was. As he hugged the slimy, soft column, his momentum sent him and the slimy thing flying forward, slapping them both up against the back of the giant's mouth. They hit with a wet smack, stuck for a moment, then fell backward again, jiggling to a stop over what Jack figured was the throat. Unfortunately, being soft and wet, the column of skin hanging in the giant's throat wasn't exactly easy to hang on to. Jack loosened his grip a bit to shift his body, and his arm slipped on the slick surface. He began to slide down the column toward the giant's throat. "No!" he shouted to the giant, hugging the skin flap tighter, despite the fact that everything about this was making him ill. "You're not going to eat me, do you hear me?" "I hear you," said a soft voice from directly behind him. Jack almost lost his grip again from surprise. "Who's there?" he shouted. "Who are you?" "Is that really the most important question right now?" the voice asked calmly. "Let's prioritize, shall we? To start, you seem to be in a spot of trouble." "Trouble?" Jack said, trying to climb back, up the skin flap, but only succeeding in slipping further down it. "Nah, I'm fine over here. Everything's good. How are you?" "A bit worried, to be perfectly honest," the voice said. "I'm not entirely sure you will survive this, and unfortunately, I can't help you." The voice sounded sad. Jack almost laughed at the sheer insanity of that statement. "Well, thanks. That's not really surprising considering the day I've had. Anyway, I hate to point this out, but aren't you in the same trouble I am? You're trapped in the giant's mouth, too. Maybe I won't help you. See how you like it." The voice laughed softly. "No, I'm in no danger. But you won't last very long where you are. You would most likely fare better over here." Jack flung his head around to see, but it didn't really do much good. The dark in front of him looked exactly the same as the dark behind him. Over where?" "On the giant's tongue," said the voice. "It's more stable, if only a bit." "Sounds like a plan," Jack said. I'll just jump over there in the dark, miss, then fall down the throat. Watch out, I might give this guy a little indigestion, and let's be honest, I wouldn't want to be in your shoes if he burps." "You may fall," the voice conceded, "or you may reach safety." The voice paused. Perhaps it is safer to stay there. At the very least, slipping into the giant's throat gradually will let you live longer than if you jump over here and miss." "True," Jack admitted, "but if I jump and make it, I might live longer than that. By, decades even." "There are two possibilities," the voice said, now sounding amused. Jack growled again. "Stop being annoying and just tell me how far to jump." "No farther than is necessary," the voice said. "Oh, I get it," Jack shouted. "You're here to torture me." Before the voice could explain, Jack angrily took a deep breath, pulled his feet up underneath him, and launched himself backward, kicking off the slippery column as hard as he could. He sailed through the dark for what felt like hours, absolutely positive he'd missed the tongue completely, and was now tumbling down into the giant's stomach. And then Jack splashed into something warm and wet, spit raining down all over him. He never would have thought he'd be so happy to have landed on the giant's stinking, soggy tongue. "It looks like you made it," the voice said dryly from behind him. "Well, after all your help, how could I not?" Jack said, trying to wipe the giant's saliva off himself and failing miserably. "What made you jump?" the voice asked. Jack gradually made it to his feet after a few slippery attempts. "I decided that it was better to take the chance and die than live a few more minutes listening to you," he said. The voice laughed. "Who are you?" Jack said, taking a careful step toward the laughter. "No one important." Jack could almost hear the voice smiling. Not anymore, at any rate. "That's helpful," Jack said, taking another step. The voice, was so quiet he had to guess. but it seemed more masculine than feminine. Always seemed to be just a few feet away at all times, despite the fact that Jack couldn't hear him moving around. And he should have been able to hear the man moving, considering how much sloshing Jack himself was making with every step. The giant's spit didn't make sneaking around very easy. As I said before, the voice said, "I can't help you, Jack. Not here, anyway." "Not here?" Jack asked, straining to locate the voice. "But I was really starting to get used to this place. Kinda homey, you know. We don't have to leave, do we?" "You didn't ask how I know your name," the voice said, sounding almost proud. "You're not curious?" Jack continued moving toward the voice. "I don't especially care," he said. "A stranger in the mouth of a giant knows your name and you don't care?" Jack shrugged. "Should I? It's not exactly the most shocking part of all this." The voice laughed again. "I like talking to you, Jack. You're quite a remarkable young man." "I get that a lot," Jack said, usually with more sarcasm. "You're keeping me talking so you can find me," the voice said. "Clever. Would some light help?" "Do you have some light?" Then Jack stopped. If the voice had light, why hadn't he used it before Jack jumped? As a matter of fact, yes. And suddenly Jack could see. The light, a sort of long, thin, whitish glow, came from a corner of the giant's mouth. Jack quickly glanced around, taking in his surroundings, then swallowed hard as he suddenly realized how close he'd been standing to the edge of the giant's tongue. Even worse, he saw how far the skin's flap had been hanging from, hung out over the throat. There was no way he could have made that jump. It wasn't even close to possible. "Is that better?" the voice said, suddenly behind him, and Jack whirled around. A man leaned casually against the wall of the giant's mouth, dressed in black armor from head to foot, a midnight blue cloak covering the armor and the man's head. On the cloak, right at the man's chest, was a silver circle within a silver oval. It was a symbol even a child would have recognized from bedtime stories and nightmares. It was the symbol that grown men talked about in quiet tones, afraid they'd be heard. It was a symbol that made Jack's blood run cold at the very sight of it. It was the symbol of the Wicked Queen's inner circle, her cruelest, most vicious nights. It was the symbol of the eyes. And that's the end of chapter 13, so it doesn't sound like he's quite at that predicament yet. It sounds like it may have gotten worse if the Wicked Queen's guardman isn't with him. So we'll have to see what happens in chapter 14 if and how Jack gets out of it. So, see you tomorrow, guys.